Okay, so as we proceed forward, what are some variables that we have discussed?
Acceleration.
Acceleration. How do you label acceleration?
Meters per second.
Meters per second squared. What's another variable we have discussed? Velocity. How do you label velocity? Meters per second. Okay. What's another variable? Well, when you say, you're right when you say displacement, or probably more importantly, distance. How is that labeled? There's many different ones that you could use, but typically we will be using what? No, meters. Okay, if you're talking about miles per hour, then your distance is miles. If we're talking about meters, you'll use meters per second. Okay, what time do we typically use? Seconds. Okay, and if I'm not mistaken, those are the variables that we have discussed up to this point. Does that sound right? I believe so. I just want to do a little bit of review just to see if this is where we have left off. I believe so. We've done this, correct? Okay. Now, why do objects decelerate? Now, what do you suppose it means to accelerate? What are you doing on the basketball court, around the track, on the cross-country field, or the football field? You are going faster, okay? So your speed is increasing, so what must your velocity be doing? Increasing as well. So if you have acceleration, your velocity is increasing. So how do objects slow down? What must their velocity be doing? Increasing or decreasing? Decreasing. Oh man, I'm glad we got different frames, or else you'd really throw me for a loop. You two are really helping me out though. I do appreciate that. Okay? So who picked their frames out first? Oh, okay. It was probably a while ago, yeah. So even though you're both wearing glasses, you're wearing different types of frames, so that helps out. Okay. Therefore, I can't remember, have we talked about this? This is your formula. We wrote this down yesterday. This is just showing you in a linear sense. In other words, this is not a negative sign, it's just a dash, that ACC, or just the letter A for acceleration, equals these two variables minus each other over time. That is your acceleration formula. Okay? So if you have 4 variables in an equation, how many must you know to solve for one unknown? You have to know 3 of the 4. Okay? So if we are solving for acceleration, we need to know these 3. If we're solving for a final velocity, we need to know these 3. If we know the initial velocity, the final velocity, and acceleration, we don't know the time. You have to know 3 of the 4 variables to solve for one of them. Now, when you get into Algebra 2, sometimes you solve for 2 unknowns in a linear equation. That doesn't mean anything to you right now. But anyway, we like math.
No.
Yeah, I think some of your hands would go up. You're good at it, you just don't like it. Thanks, Ben. He's the first one that I remember saying that. So it's all his fault. No, it's not his fault. Okay. Okay. So tomorrow we'll start talking about some of your forces. We don't solve for force in here. That is next chapter, but it is some of your vocabulary terms. You saw balanced force, unbalanced force. We'll get to that tomorrow. Okay?
So we're done today?
No. We're not quite done. We do, but not quite yet. See, yeah, you're thinking. So you need to rub off on some of these other ding-dongs in here so they start thinking.
I think this is the place and the time for a Big Bang Theory.
No.
Yeah. I'm agreeing.
You are not upperclassmen yet, so. All right. Now, are you an upperclassman?
Yeah.
Are you an upperclassman? Are you an upperclassman? Are you an upperclassman? See, that's the definition of what we call insanity, answering the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. Okay? All right. I would suggest that you write this down because this is a different type of problem. Okay? In other words, the human thigh bone will only fracture if it is acted upon by a certain amount of force or speed. The vertebral column can withstand a certain amount of stress. So if you are into a type of forensics, okay, utilizing math, and that's what the police might do from time to time to see how fast was this person going in an investigation. Okay? So write this problem down. I suggest that you do, but again, remember, we're all in high school. We hope that you take the initiative to do that.
What kind of problems are these? Are we still talking about acceleration?
And velocities.
So, it's acceleration problems? Finding acceleration or finding the velocity?
Well, we'll find out. You're getting too far ahead of yourself. It's good to be well, it doesn't have to be in the right category. It just has to be in the right chapter. Oh, okay. You'll figure that out when you write it down. You're actually solving for a velocity, but they don't know that yet.
Okay. So it gives us the acceleration.
We'll write it down first, and then we'll determine what it is that we need to do. Oh boy, hot dogs today, yum.
They're sub-average.
Well, it's just that, you know, I might get asked by the ladies in the kitchen, do you want hot dogs? Yeah, I suppose, but I see a whole bunch of them every day. We told a funny. Huh? Yeah. It was a funny, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Some people can write very fast. Okay? Some people can, some people can't, but we'll get to the same point in time.
Can you do that laugh again for us?
Why?
Sounds funny.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Huh.
So I think we need to switch spots.
Now, as we go further down the road, some people have to learn this the hard way. What does that mean? What do you think?
You have to learn it by getting in trouble.
In other words, sometimes there's a simple way to do things. In other words, maybe, like, if you have a curfew, I don't know, it's not my place to say whether you do or don't or how late it is, but some people may decide, well, I'm just going to stay out late, and when you do that, you learn the hard way that that's not how you want to do things. Sometimes it's just more simple just to do what's asked of you. When it comes to these problem-solving papers, Cooperative learning is okay. That means you're helping each other out. But you will be responsible for your own work when it comes to these evaluations and the exams. So if we're one of those types to where, I'm going to pick on you two, I don't know why. Okay? So are you looking at Jacob's paper or is Jacob's looking at Alex's?
Alex looking at Jacob.
Okay? So we're making the decision, oh, so that's how you, I'm just going to write down what you got done. And then I evaluate these papers and I hand them back and I say, wow, you're doing such a great job. All these problems are correct. You really know what you're doing. Then I put an evaluation in front of you. Oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. And then I look back, well, your daily work is just fine. Shouldn't that be the same as your evaluations? It should be, but I get it. It's an evaluation and you get nervous. Yes, I know. Believe it or not, I was young once too. But let's say bad calls in volleyball, football, basketball, those are part of the game. You have to find a way to overcome that. Okay? You have to be able to find a way to overcome dealing with, oh my gosh, this is an evaluation. Just do our best. Okay. You've wrote the problem down. You've read the problem. What is the next thing you should do?
Do your setup.
Okay, your setup or writing down what? What we know, the information. What do we know?
Your acceleration is 9.8.
Okay, now, how do we know that this is not a velocity? This is. Because here is your label, 9.8 meters per second squared. Okay? What else do we know in the problem?
The time.
What about it?
4.25 seconds. Your time is 4.25.
Okay, so your time is 4.25 seconds. What else do we know? This is where you're using your mathematical intuition. You're not given a number or value, but you decipher, oh, I can see what that value is because it's telling me in that problem. In other words, for instance, your bottle of water right now, how fast is it moving? It's 0 because it's stationary or it's at rest. So when you see something that is stationary or it's moving from rest, that's telling you what type of velocity is that? Is that a final or an initial? It's an initial because later on in the problem it says how fast is a rock moving after 4.25 seconds. That must mean that 4.25 seconds earlier it had an initial velocity. In this case, it was 0. Okay? So now we're looking for your final velocity, and we don't know. Now that you got your setup here, your important information, we do what the formula tells you to do. Okay? That's why you write it down, so you can use that formula.
Final velocity.
Okay? So where do these values go on this equal sign? Okay? So 9.8 goes here. We don't need to label it because we did that over here. So what goes on our right-hand side?
VI and VF over time.
Minus what? But we can put that value in because we accounted for it here. And then what goes on the bottom? We've said this before, we don't like fractions, okay? Anytime you take 0 from a number or a variable, what do you get? The same answer, okay? So, what we can do, are we changing the value of 9.8? No, it's still 9.8, okay? We can cross multiply here. So, what would 1 times VF be?
1 VF.
Okay, or just VF We already said that anytime you take 0 away from a variable or a number, you just get the same answer. So we've accounted for that. So 1 times VF minus 0 just gives you VF. If we cross multiply it here, what do we do with these two variables? Or not variables, numbers. Multiply.
41.65.
Okay? Meters per second, right? Because that's how velocity is labeled. Now, looking at this, you might be able to determine, okay, at 100 miles per hour, that's when the human thigh bone will break. In this case, I know that's meters per second, but that's probably about 95 miles per hour. So in this case, you could mathematically say that, all right, this person's thigh bone did not break on account of the injuries. Something else must have caused that. So math can be used for this. Okay.
So is that the answer right
That is the answer. To me, the best way to help yourself, and for me to help you if you have questions, write down your information that you know. That way you have all your labels in here. Then you look at your formula, you start plugging those values in for those variables. Then you can show off your algebraic skills.
No.
Who's got skills?
I got mad.
We skills for anything. All right. Any questions over this?
No.
All right. Let's continue to watch some speed. I'll stop the recording there.
Are we watching that video?
We will pick up with this next time.